Krill be under your names, friends. It's a privilege to come into your homes, and if you're ever here in Gulf City, make sure to stop by the Church of Aleazimology and be a part of one of our services. We will share with you the whale's great wisdom. I'd like to start off today with a quick story. The other day, Mina and I took a ride over to 7+2 to pick up beer, cigarettes, and junk food, as we do on a pretty regular basis. And when I went in, I saw a man wearing a life preserver. I said, "Mr. McFly, why are you wearing this thing? We're 50 miles from the Gulf." And he said, "I just want to be ready for when the whale brings in the tide." I told him that when your tide rises and you reach entanglement, a life preserver will be the last thing you need. Say it with me now. I do not fear my death. I will evolve into a ghost. Death is not the end. It is only the beginning. I will reach for entanglement. I will learn the whale's ways, and I will step forward into a better existence. All hail blue whale, Krill be unto his name. I want to talk to you today about your tide and how it is rising thanks to the fin of Alhut Aleazim. Sometimes when we look at the absolute state of our lives, we feel stuck. We know the promises of the whale, but when we observe ourselves, we only see where we are, not where we're going. You look at your savings account, you look at your checking account, you look at your CDs. You're looking at your savings, checking, and CDs, and there's no sign of things improving. But the word of the whale says that the waterline we see is only an illusion, and the high tide will last forever. Don't be discouraged by the dryness of your life. The never-ending waves of the whale's wisdom are on their way. Your tide is rising. Your glass may be empty, but the waves are on their way. Your family may not respect the way you wasted your life in quiet desperation, but the waves are on their way. Your healthcare professionals may say that you are at death's door and that you have to stop eating red meat today, but the waves are on their way. When your life seems to have completely dried up, don't get discouraged. The waves are on their way. Your tide is rising. It may look impossible from where you stand today, but your tide is rising. Don't be fooled by the fleeting life that's placed before you. Take comfort in the afterlife you know will wash over your body and remake you in translucent white glory. Alhut Aleazim is behind you, working for you, and the waves are on their way. Your tide is rising. In 48 million BC, a lightly furred giant called Pakicetus, sometimes known to human historians as the first whale, roamed the earth. Pakicetus lived near the water, his diet consisting mostly of fish, and after a while Pakicetus got tired of having furry feet but always being wet. It became very time-consuming for Pakicetus to constantly have to brush his hair, and a perm was completely out of the question. But nothing he could see told him that there was any reason to think he'd ever be able to swim. He didn't know his tide was rising. When he looked around, he saw no reason to think anything would ever change. And the more Pakicetus thinks about it, the more he starts to internalize his problem, wondering why he isn't able to swim. Nothing around him on land can swim, and neither could he. How could that ever change? But there was something special about Pakicetus. His tide was rising. Even though it seemed impossible, one day Pakicetus jumped into the ocean and instantly evolved into Ambulocetus, otherwise known as the walking whale. All those years that Pakicetus walked on the earth with sore feet and weak knees, he didn't realize that his tide was rising. And like Pakicetus, you may feel like you're stuck on land, and you'll never be able to get to all the delicious fish you desire. But don't worry about that now. Your tide is rising. You were not put on this earth to suffer the tedium of mediocrity. Your tide is rising. When making the next step toward entanglement seems impossible, just remember Pakicetus. When he had no hope for the future, the tide came in and his life changed. You may be just a Pakicetus walking the shores, wishing you had opposable thumbs so you could learn to fish, but remember, your tide is rising and your life can change. You will be amazed at your own evolution. You will be amazed at how high your tide can rise when you follow the teachings of Alhut Aleazim. Krill be unto his name. After Ambulocetus swims around for a while, he finally discovers that he can eat krill directly. This really kick-started the evolution of blue whales just as the planet had intended. Ambulocetus quickly became Myocetus. Myocetus became Durodon. And by 34 million BC, Durodon had evolved into Lanocetus. At last, earliest whales' return to the sea was complete. Pakicetus had shed its feet and fur in favor of smooth skin and fins. He had forsaken the violence and lameness of living on land in favor of the ocean where there were no cops. And by the time Lanocetus returned to the seas, he had developed a new tool called baleen, a filtration system inside that mammal's mouth that allowed Lanocetus to take in vast amounts of water and squeeze the liquid out through his baleen, allowing him to eat mad krill, freeing up more time to sleep and to chase lady whales. And here we are today, praising him and lifting his name up, knowing that when we accept the whale, he will evolve us too. When you let Alhut Aleazim into your home, you will see that your tide is rising. You will know a higher water line than you have ever seen before, and drowning in his knowledge will evolve you in ways you never thought possible. You thought it could never happen to you, but suddenly you are refitted in translucent white and given the bounty of Alhut Aleazim's prosperity. You went from crawling to balling. What happened? Your tide was rising. It happened to me, but once I died, Alhut Aleazim remade me and made me capable in ways I never dreamed of. My tide was rising. I can't help but share his message with you because your tide is rising too, and a rising tide floats all boats. You have no idea the flotation you can achieve through the awesome power of Aleazimology. You can't even see it in front of you, but your tide is rising. And if you think you're doing well now, just wait until you see what you can do with the fin of Alhut Aleazim at your back. Accept him into your mind. If you stay focused on the land, stay focused on how big and flat your problems are, then you will keep your brain stuck in a Pakicetus mode, you see. You won't be able to imagine what's possible in the ocean. You won't be able to become Ambulocetus. You won't be able to evolve. You can't think Pakicetus thoughts and live an Ambulocetus life. You can't reach entanglement if you don't take responsibility for your future. If you say, I can't get it together, I can't win, you're only building a levee against the tide. If you say, I can't imagine a way that's better than this life, you are shoring up your seawall to keep that tide out. Your tide is rising. Let it flood your home, even if you just got brand new blue carpet. Be like Jan Hus. In the 1400s, when he was stuck trying to reform the Catholic Church, when no one would listen to what he had to say, and he didn't see a way for his life to change. When he was cast out for trying to spread the teachings of the whale to the Catholics, he thought it was impossible to help anyone reach entanglement. He didn't know that his tide was rising. He kept his faith in the whale, and in 1415, when the Catholics burned Jan Hus at the stake, he heard the song of the whale and knew that Alhut Aleazim's waves of wisdom could wash away those flames, and he would be renewed in translucency. His tide was high, and the whale evolved him. Alhut Aleazim even deemed him worthy of being a prophet. You may feel like you're being burned alive, but the power of Aleazimology can put out the dumpster fire in your life, can remake you in that translucent white glory. If you don't believe in the blue whale, you may well remain a Pakicetus. But when you are faithful to his teachings, you can't imagine the abundance you will see in your life and the new dimensions of prosperity you will be given in the afterlife. Be like Jan Hus. Even when he was being consumed by those Catholic flames, even in the worst of times, his faith did not waver, and he heard the song of the whale. Raise the name of Alhut Aleazim up high above you and give him thanks and praise, for it is the movement of his fins that creates the awesome tidal waves of prosperity that we have in our lives and afterlives today. If you practice his teachings and follow his ways, then like Jan Hus, you will be evolved after the Catholics burn you alive. You too can be remade by the great and powerful blue whale. You can see evolution in your own lifetime and live dreams you never thought possible. Now you can take on the world, armed with the wisdom of Alhut Aleazim. All hail blue whale, Krill be unto his name. We believe, just like Jan Hus believed, just like Jesus Christ believed, just like Amenemop believed. You may be on the land today, but it's all part of the process. It's a sign that the waves are coming. Don't feel discouraged. As long as you stay faithful, your evolution is coming. Your afterlife is safe in the belly of the whale, and because you kept praising him and hailing him and spreading his teachings, it will be ready for you when it's time for your life to end. Now it is in your future, and your future is up to you. Alhut Aleazim has your back, but you have to let that high tide into your home and say, we hail the whale in this neighborhood, pal. Don't wait for someone else's tide to come in so you can float on their merits. Go out there and open your doors to Alhut Aleazim. Let those waves crash into your home and bowl you over with the power of Aleazimology. Your consumer electronics may be destroyed from the flood, but your tide is rising. The spirit of the blue whale is in each and every one of you. Don't bring the expectation of what's possible down to just what you can imagine. Lift it up in the name of Alhut Aleazim. Lift up your expectations to where he resides at the bottom of the ocean, and remember that your tide is rising. Pakicetus didn't limit what was possible based on what he saw. He jumped right in that ocean even though he had his cell phone in his pocket. Jan Hus didn't limit the scope of his life to only the flames he saw before him. He believed in the word of Alhut Aleazim and heard his song at the stake. When you believe in the whale, he makes things happen you could never make happen on your own. He can raise your tide beyond what you ever thought possible. He can lift you up to heights you can't even breathe at. And if you just believe in his awesome power, believe in his wisdoms, believe in his teachings, he can bestow upon you a state you've never heard, seen, or imagined. Have you not been kept down long enough? Believe in Alhut Aleazim, and he will lift you up to heights you've never seen. Are you not kept in a small enough cage? Believe in Alhut Aleazim, and he will free you from bondage and give you freedom you can't conceive. Hasn't your drought gone on long enough? Believe in Alhut Aleazim, and his waves of prosperity will flood your home. As we spread his teachings, so too will he give us the tools we need to succeed. Like Jan Hus, I believe in him, and I believe in you. Your tide is rising. Thank you so much for listening today, friends. Through Alhut Aleazim's teachings, all human lives will be entangled. All hail blue whale, Krill be unto his name.